Okay, 6 new devlogs about a new update. I am psyched. Guess what it is about if I play you some music.
Those of you that have been following this game for a while must have noticed that the scope is growing.
This is no longer a small game about simple ecosystems. This is a game about life in space, borrowing heavily from sci-fi movies and games. But if you think about aliens in games and movies, there's one thing you might think about that the Sapling does not have. Horror.
One of the main pillars of the next big update will therefore be body parts and game mechanics that are scary. Interestingly, the most requested scary thing you will see if we create a planet with an animal and a plant with flowers, turn on random mutations, and then create an area here without any nutrients, which is a new soil statistic. More details later. Okay, let's run this for a few minutes while I tell you about other things that will be in this update and return later. For those of you new here, this is evolution simulation game The Sapling, my solo indie game project. It has 2 game modes. There are scenarios tasking you to design an ecosystem that meets specific requirements, but there's also a sandbox where you can build your own algae, plants and animals, turn on random mutations and see how they evolve.
Okay, so an update with scary stuff. But what is fear or emotion in general? To be honest, I don't really know, but I can tell you what it is in the simulation.
From now on, in the behavior UI, there will be a new hormone tab, where you can define up to 5 hormones. You can think of hormones as extra status bars, like the health bar, that can go up and down depending on what happens to the animal. And just like you're completely free to design whatever season you want to see, allowing you to create something very different from what we have anywhere on Earth, you also have complete freedom for the hormones. You decide the starting level when an animal is born, how it changes every day, what events increase and decrease the hormone level, and how the animal responds to it. And to give it a true alien flavor, I've even had some fun with a quick hormone name generator. So let's say this hormone represents fear. When the animal is born, it starts at 0 and it slowly fades away over time. So what will trigger this hormone? I've added quite a number of new triggers, like being pregnant or low health, but let's say that if you see other members of your species, you feel safe, so that will make it go down. But if you see an animal that is red and striped, the hormone will go up drastically. Existing players will notice that there are now a lot more patterns to choose from. I've made it way easier for myself to add new skin patterns, so I immediately couldn't stop myself from doubling the amount. But more importantly, the skin patterns, one of the few things about animals that were purely decorative, now also have meaning, because they can be used for danger recognition. If, for example, a lot of animals are afraid of striped predators, having a striped skin becomes an evolutionary advantage. To be able to test whatever hormone system you come up with, I have now also redesigned the UI that pops up whenever you zoom in on an animal. And furthermore, there is now also a light attached to your cursor, so if you want to be able to trigger a particular action manually, you can create an instinct that says, if you see a light, do something.
The cool part of this system, at least if you ask me, is that you can use it for all kinds of behavior. For example, you can also use the hormones as a counter to only do a particular action if something happens multiple times. Or maybe a timer, so that the animal will do something at a certain stage in life. Or a combination of the two, so that it only responds if something happens multiple times within a short time frame.
But of course a hormone isn't useful if the animals don't respond to it. Besides the actions already in the game, like crying, glowing or running away, I'm adding several new ones. In the context of this scary update, the most important one of these is to hide in your shell. This new action will become available if you select one of 3 new skin types inspired by turtle shells. When I started working on this update, this idea was actually quite low on the list of ideas, because I expected it would require a complex procedural system to build around the shape of the body. But the first experiments showed this wasn't the case at all. It looks totally fine, even if the shell always stays the same. The only slightly more intelligent thing is that it tries to figure out where the neck ends and the torso begins. When there are side limbs, it will use the first side leg for this. Otherwise, it will take a position somewhere in the middle. Furthermore, the first 2 segments are used to calculate the rotation of the shell. Besides this streamlined shell for swimming creatures, there's also this one for land creatures. It's better at temperature regulation and is inspired by tortoises. And finally, this shell might seem inspired by speculative evolution, but is actually the alligator snapping turtle. But it's not just skin types, there will also be body parts to unlock the hide action. It took me a while to get used to the idea of non-slimy creatures to be able to hide in a shell like this, but then I remembered the hermit crab. To model these shells, I've used Blender's geometry nodes for the first time, and man, this stuff is gold. Look, I've got here all of these simple machines basically that I've linked together so they form what is basically a procedural shell generator. And I've got all of these knobs that I can turn to change it however I want. Speaking of body parts, there will again be lots of new body parts in this update. I mentioned before that I have improved my DevTools to import them, and these DevTools are now integrated into the game. This not only makes it easier for modders to add their own custom body parts, it also makes the process even more efficient for me. And boy did I use them.
The final number might be slightly different, but last time I counted we were going from 190 body parts in the build that's currently live to 272 body parts. That's of course way more than I can introduce in these 6 devlogs, so along with the body parts in the main story, I will show 2 new bonus body parts at the end of every video and tell a little bit about them. So even if I bore you out of your mind talking about theoretical biology or optimizing code, which I will talk about in a later episode by the way, you have something to look forward to.
To keep all of these new body parts apart, I'm also going to officially name them, which is actually a surprisingly common request. Naming body parts is something I never seriously considered when starting, but back then I only had 5 or 6 shapes per body part type instead of 50 or so. To come up with the names, I'm taking a lot of inspiration from the player-maintained wiki. I'll put a link in the description below, but I sometimes go for a somewhat longer name with more words. This is because, besides naming, I have the additional goal of explaining what you can do with this body part. So we've seen hiding with a skin type, hiding with a body part, and now the final one, hiding with your color. Oh, sorry. One of the new statistics visible in the new organism detail UI is the camouflage level. This level will get higher if the skin color is closer to the color of the grass in that area. Or if there's no grass, it will use the color of the ground instead. So prey animals in a world with yellow grass are more likely to evolve yellow fur, and animals on a snow planet are more likely to become white. When designing this feature, I tried to incorporate more realism for a long time. To explain what I mean by that, have a look at this, which is how animals hunted by tigers see the world. And this is how humans see the world. In other words, your color vision really determines what is camouflage to you. In the Sapling, different eyes can make distinctions in different color ranges. I've even added a new visualization to make this clearer, so it feels like something should be done with that. But here's the problem, I expect at least part of the player base won't know that tiger fact, so wouldn't understand what's going on. Imagine you see a bright purple animal that really sticks out in the environment. How do I communicate to the player that this one is camouflage to some of the prey animals in this ecosystem?
So at least for now, to keep things simple, we have just one camouflage system, that is camouflage as perceived by humans.
Okay, enough defense, let's go to why all the creatures I've been teasing look so scary. Attack. I've added quite a few new body parts that add extra attack, and a large part of these are underwater mouths, which is good because the game has fewer options there. But it's not just attack. In the previous update I've added a poisoned state for animals, mainly intended as a way for plants to select which animals eat their fruit. As you can imagine, the step from poison to venom is incredibly small. Animals now have a venom type, and if you give them a venomous mouth or other venomous body part, they can poison other animals around them. When I say poisonous body parts, I mostly mean abdomens with poisonous stingers, like this one. Previously I had only one, intended for storing liquid, that didn't connect to any other body part. The result was that animals could evolve these huge body parts basically out of nothing, which was kinda weird. It also happened during the latest evolution simulated run, and I decided to keep them out of the frame because it was so strange. Now instead there's a whole family tree of related abdomens, which is way more gradual and just better. And then finally, as the last scary thing in this video, animals won't be the only organisms to catch prey anymore. Let's have a look at our little patch of land without nutrients. As you can see, plants are growing here again, but where are they getting their nutrients? You guessed it, they catch them. To save myself some time, there are no animal catching animations or something like that, because obviously I never set up a complicated animation system for plants. I might add it later, no promises, but for now animals just disappear when they are eaten. You can tell it happened though, because the predator plants show up in the species detail view. And with that often requested scary thing, we will end this episode. But with 5 more episodes to come, you might wonder, what other scary things can you add to this game besides body parts for animals and even plants? Well, you will see. And now for the bonus body parts I promised. Our first bonus body part is inspired by rattlesnakes, and it's the first body part outside of the mouth that can make noise. In real life, rattlesnakes use their rattle to warn off predators, but in the sapling you can of course set the instincts however you want. The second is a mouth with a ballistic tongue, which evolved independently in both salamanders and frogs. We already saw last time how the trunk mouth has its own eating animation, and this is essentially the same thing. It was super annoying when looking for reference, because the frog mouth is also a bird. Okay, bye.